Good afternoon, everyone. It is with great honor and appreciation that I have been given this opportunity to address this distinguished gathering from around the world. First and foremost, I must thank my wife, who I call my Queen Bee, Chanda, for all of her love and support throughout our 9-year battle with ALS. No one in their right mind signs up for this assignment. You were reluctantly drafted and forced to serve. Your best chance to advance, despite your circumstance, means you must evolve with the ever-evolving changes physically, mentally, and emotionally. I have been blessed with the most incredible partner who has loved me during every phase of this adventure. Now, she might not have liked me at times, but that is okay, because I paid $35 back in 1994 for the marriage license, so she can't go anywhere without me rolling behind her. I love you, Chan, and thank you for standing by me through the good and the bad and in sickness and in health. Oh, and if you all will allow me to brag just a few seconds more, my Queen Bee has been named the 2016 Sylvia Mackey Woman of the Year by the Gridiron Greats Foundation. She will be honored in Las Vegas in June for her strength, tenacity, and commitment. She is my MVP, and I congratulate you again, my Queen. I also have my dad here with me today, Marcus Brigance. So glad to have you with us, Dad. I also want to acknowledge our wonderful director of the Brigance Brigade Foundation, Amanda Mummert. Thanks for all you do, Amanda. Thank you to all the organizers of the 3rd Annual Tracheotomy Symposium for all of your efforts to make this conference a success. We all thank you and applaud your efforts. The answer is yes. Football relies on teamwork. Every person has to know and execute his particular skill set to the best of his ability. There also needs to be clear, effective communication to succeed. I view my medical team the same way. I have the very best medical team that is a cohesive unit. When there is something about my care that needs addressing, the appropriate team members are looped in, and we get the issue resolved. Each of you have brought your insatiable thirst for greater knowledge to Baltimore to stretch and grow your skill sets through the 5 different tracks: the living, learning, working, playing, and growing tracks. However, life also has a built-in adversity track that can be a great revealer of the treasures God has buried deep inside of each of us, Chanda, and I learned this valuable insight 9 years ago, now in 2007. We both have been overcomers our whole lives. Whether it was my wife overcoming severe asthma as a child, or my overcoming a speech impediment at a young age, by God's grace and mercy, we have continuously triumphed over tragedy. But we were thrown for a life loop in April 2007 that would stretch our faith beyond our perceived limits. Since the age of 8, I have loved and played the game of football. The game has taught me the meaning of commitment, discipline, and dedication. I trained and beat my body to achieve remarkable athletic feats. We were blessed to play football professionally for 12 seasons and to play in 5 championship games. After our retirement in 2003, we joined the front office of the Baltimore Ravens in 2004 as the Director of Player Development. Our responsibilities included helping players and their significant others with completing their degrees, financial education, and life skills training. We enjoyed the chance to impart wisdom into the lives of our men and women. In the spring of 2007, I noticed weakness in my right arm while playing racquetball. I didn't think much of it at the time and just continued on with life as usual. Unfortunately, my strength deteriorated to the point where it was a workout just to lift my own arm. We consulted a few doctors who by process of elimination determined that I had ALS. Amyotrophic lateral sclerosis is a progressive neurodegenerative disease that attacks motor neurons in the brain, which are called upper motor neurons, and spinal cord, which are called lower motor neurons, and affects muscle function. The motor neurons control the movement of various voluntary muscles within our bodies, including the diaphragm, that controls our abilities to breathe and speak, associated with the loss of motor neurons to function in ALS. The various muscles cells waste away, atrophy, resulting in increased muscle weakness. A common first symptom is a painless weakness in a hand, arm, foot, or leg, which occurs in more than half of all cases. The prognosis is most patients only live 2 to 5 years from onset. We were devastated. I didn't drink, smoke, and worked out obsessively. We couldn't understand how I did everything right and could be dead by the age of 40. It seemed extremely unfair initially, but our faith in Jesus Christ would strengthen our hearts to embrace the assignment. Eventually, within 2 years after my diagnosis, my breathing had deteriorated to the point that we had to make the tough decision of whether or not to get the tracheostomy. I remember vividly meeting with Laura Clausen of the Hopkins ALS Clinic. She thoroughly went through the pros and cons with Chanda and me. The biggest benefit would be that I could continue living. Given my athletic background, I have always been taught since Little League football that you never just give up and quit, no matter what your circumstance. If I decided to allow the disease to take its course and not choose to try any life-extending measures, I would be quitting. I didn't exactly know what my quality of life would look like, but given the many obstacles I have had to overcome in my life, I liked my chances. The biggest concern about getting a trach were costs of in-home nursing care, and the toll it could take on Chanda as my caregiver. Also, what would my quality of life be after the tracheotomy? As many of you already know, living with any prolonged medical condition can be very costly and requires strategic financial planning, as well as sacrifice by your family and friends. After doing some research, I discovered that around-the-clock private nursing care could cost anywhere from $250,000 to $500,000 annually. The costs could be significantly lower if my wife or other relative could be my full-time caregiver. Realistically, one person can't do this job alone. We would need help. There was also the option of being moved to a long-term care facility. I definitely didn't want to move out of my home if I didn't have to. Other questions that I dealt with were, do I want to continue living a life stuck in a wheelchair with the loss of all physical independence, allowing a ventilation machine to breathe for me? What about my wife, Chanda? She didn't sign on for this when we were married. I knew she would be there for me either way, but did I want to subject her to that life? Once we had our tea party and dried our tears, God revealed the purpose in the pain. We realized that every triumph and trial up to this point had served as preparation for us to be more than conquerors through Jesus Christ over ALS and any other challenge that would come our way. If there was any way that I could continue living, I knew that I owed it to God, Chanda, my family, and friends to try. Would the assignment be easy? Absolutely not. However, my life's journey had prepared me for this. The time finally came in 2009 when I could no longer put the tracheostomy procedure off. My medical team recommended the use of a BiPAP machine which helped to give me better respiratory function. I continued to go to work normally until one day I just couldn't get enough air into my lungs. This is the part of my story when I have to give a word to the wise. The athlete in me wanted to see how long I could go without having the procedure. I guess I found out the answer, but it cost me a collapsed lung in the process. Like my parents used to tell me all the time, the heart had mixed for a soft behind. Laura and other medical advisors had told me I should have the procedure done before I ended up in an emergency room situation, and they were forced to intubate me. My respiratory function had diminished to the point I could no longer delay the procedure. I was admitted to Hopkins, where Dr. Feller Kaufman and his surgical team would perform the tracheotomy. They also discovered I had a collapsed right lung filled with fluid. The surgery went well, and when I woke up and gained my senses, I realized that I was no breathing on my own, but was breathing with the rhythmic cycle of a ventilator. The one immediate difference I noticed was my ability to breathe again without laboring. My throat was really sore, as one would expect. There would be a few dramatic adjustments for me. The first was getting acclimated to having my trach suctioned. You see, when you get trach, you need assistance bringing up excess secretions at times. Where I would just normally cough before, now a catheter had to be inserted to suction out excess secretions to clear my lungs. The next thing I noticed was that I was tethered to this ventilator. I couldn't turn or move suddenly without irritating the newly inserted trach. It was such a relief to finally be able to breathe again, but there would be many adaptations that would need to happen in order for me to have the quality of life I hope to continue to live. With the insertion of the trach also came the need for my own medical equipment and mobile supply closet. I would now have the ventilator, cough assist machine, portable suction machine, and every hose, gauze, and filter known to man in my medical bag. I couldn't just get up and go like I used to, but with a great team around me and planning ahead, my quality of life has been altered, but I can't still pretty much do all that I used to do. As I regained my strength, I also regained my mobility with the help of my power wheelchair. My nurses found the best ways to mobilize the equipment, and I was back in the game of life. I was right back at work within a few months. Local traveling has been easy as for me with the use of a wheelchair-equipped van. Long-distance traveling has been a bit more challenging. We prefer train to the airplane because of airport security. If we do have to fly, it is all hands on deck with 3 or 4 carts with medical equipment. Not to mention the security check, where we need about 10 to 15 men to go through the X-ray machine. That is the most tiring aspect of air travel for my team. The more we have traveled, the better we have gotten the routine down. I also have to make sure my vent and medical equipment has been pre-approved to fly by the airline. Some vents are approved for flight by the FAA and others aren't, so you need to be aware of that. In regards to the everyday living with the trach, I had a feeding tube inserted about the same time as I got the tracheostomy, so I never tried eating with my trach, even though some people are able to. As I mentioned earlier, with ALS, all of your voluntary muscle movements are affected. I lost the ability to swallow and eventually the ability to speak because of my weakened diaphragm and throat muscles. Some trachs are equipped with a speaking valve, which I utilized for a brief period of time. Eventually, I needed to attach pressurized airflow to speak, but that became too cumbersome. Just before I began losing my voice, I was introduced to the speech-generating device I am using today. Technological advances have been astounding in the world. My eye gaze device tracks my pupil movement, allowing me to type on my on-screen keyboard the way all of you type on your smartphones and computer devices. This device allows me to interact with the world around me, where otherwise I would be locked in and frustrated not being able to communicate. The only downside I have found with the device is the normal my computer doesn't process fast enough, as I am sure many of you currently experience with your own personal computers. There is also the delay whenever I am having a conversation. I can't type as fast as my brain thinks, so I am often lagging in my response to the live conversations. ALS takes your muscle movement and ability to speak, but your brain is still very much aware and active. I still have the sense of touch, hearing, and a little taste and smell. I am still all here. My sleeping patterns have gotten better over time, as my body has acclimated to the trach. I used to wake up quite frequently needing to be suctioned. My secretion production was more frequent in the beginning than it is now. I have set sleeping positions now that are most comfortable for me, always being conscious of the trach and hose positioning. On the advocacy front, I really wish that insurance companies would cover and home nursing care needs to allow people to remain in their homes. I don't think that it is right at all that people must choose between life and death because they can't afford nursing care. My whole reason for sharing my story of living with ALS is to show the world that life can go on after a terminal diagnosis. One of the key factors as to why I am doing so well is because I made the decision to explore life-extending procedures like getting a tracheostomy. The other is my positive attitude and striving to make a positive impact on everybody I encounter each day. It might only be a smile, but that might be the only smile that person might receive that day. Our joy is directly linked to our attitude in the midst of our troubles. Charles Swindoll says this about attitude: the longer I live, the more I realize the impact of attitude on life. Attitude, to me, is more important than facts. It is more important than the past, than education, than money, than circumstances, than failures, than successes, than what other people think, or say, or do. It is more important than appearance, giftedness, or skill. It will make or break a company, a church, a home. The remarkable thing is we have a choice every day regarding the attitude we will embrace for that day. We cannot change our past. We cannot change the fact that people will act in a certain way. We cannot change the inevitable. The only thing we can do is play on the one string we have, and that is our attitude. I am convinced that life is 10% what happens to me and 90% how I react to it. And so it is with you. We are in charge of our attitudes. My medical team has been excellent in outlining what opportunities and options existed during each phase of the disease progression. If there is one area that I think some medical professionals could improve, it would be in delivering hope with the diagnosis. For example, even though there is no cure for ALS, I sought out 2 opinions about my diagnosis. One doctor basically said, get your affairs in order, because you are about to die. The other said, let's get you all the equipment and information to help you live the best life possible. He was optimistic about life itself, even though he confirmed a terminal diagnosis. When possible, everyone in the medical community should share the hope, as well as the reality. While there are some who would opt to not receive a trach, I must say with all sincerity that I am happy that I went through with getting a tracheostomy. It has allowed me to continue contributing to my wife, family, and humanity as a whole. I have gotten to experience another Super Bowl with the Baltimore Ravens because I chose to live. I have authored my memoir because I chose to live. Chanda and I started the Brigance Brigade Foundation to equip, encourage, and empower those living with ALS because I decided to live. There are so many other priceless memories I have experienced because I decided to choose to live with a shrink instead of succumbing to the ravages of ALS. The largest challenge I had personally dealt with is my own self-perception of what I used to look like as a well-conditioned athlete compared to the shell of a body I have now with tubes and hoses attached to it. Despite of those feelings, I have come to recognize that true strength is made perfect in weakness. I have lifted thousands of pounds and weights during my athletic career, but never have I been as strong mentally and as empowered as I am now sitting in front of this audience today. You see, true power isn't entirely composed of what you can do physically, but what impact you are able to make to enhance the lives of the world around us. I have made a greater impact on society in the last 9 years with ALS than I have in my previous 36 years. We have an undeniable power on the inside which allows us to stand firm when the winds of adversity attempt to uproot us from the foundation of our faith. Throughout our relatively short life, we have been blessed with great wisdom and experiential knowledge. We have learned that adversity is not only unavoidable, but very necessary for our growth and maturity. It serves as preparation for our promotion. We all remember back in school that you were never promoted to the next level without being tested. The same theory applies to life. We can't be promoted to greater levels in life without being tested. As we pass each test, we put on another layer of resiliency that allows us to stand firm during the greatest of hardships, with the right perspective, having the vision to see the opportunity within our adversity, willing to witness in the spirit of excellence, cloaked in resilience. I leave you with this final story. We all have been given a power and light on the inside to illuminate the atmosphere around us in the middle of what others may perceive as our darkest hour. When I was 13 years old, I left my home in Houston, Texas, to go to Dale City, Virginia, for the best summer vacation I ever had as a kid. I worked with my uncle, who was the head chef at a local country club. I worked at their poolside snack bar, where I probably ate as much as I sold. This was a great summer because I made what I thought was a boatload of money, and I discovered one of the most amazing sights I had ever seen. One evening at dusk, while looking out over the first D box, the air started to sparkle with tiny amber and greenish lights. Upon closer examination, I discovered the insects we call fireflies. We didn't have these natural night lights where I grew up. Not too long after my encounter, I heard a story about a young boy who was curious about how these tiny insects were able to create so much power in their little bodies to create light to illuminate the night sky. So he found a mason jar and began his expedition to capture some of the fireflies to investigate the source of their power. When he examined his little subjects, he didn't find an electrical cord, battery pack, or solar panels. Frustrated from not being able to locate the source of their power, boys being boys, he took one and smashed it. When he witnessed the secretions from the bug illuminating on the tabletop, he simply concluded it was the stuff on the inside. We too have stuff on the inside that is an inconceivable power that allows us to shine in what others would perceive as an unbearable circumstance. That same ability rests in every person in this room to rise above any adverse circumstance you have or will ever encounter. It is about the stuff on the inside. One of my favorite quotes by Ralph Waldo Emerson states, "What lies behind us and what lies before us are tiny matters in comparison to what lies within us." Thank you all so much for your attentiveness today. I have been asked to answer a few questions that were sent to me from the audience. Please. Are there particular skills that you developed or used as a professional football player that you now use in helping to manage your healthcare team and experience? The answer is yes. Football relies on teamwork. Every person has to know and execute his particular skill set to the best of his ability. There also needs to be clear, effective communication to succeed. I view my medical team the same way. I have the very best medical team that is a cohesive unit. When there is something about my care that needs addressing, the appropriate team members are looped in, and we get the issue resolved. The next question is a two-part question. What was the most unexpected thing about having a trach, and what defied your expectations, or really took you by surprise, good or bad? The most unexpected thing I have experienced having a trach is the secretions which come from around the stoma. I think secretions would be more internal, not external. Our solution has been to put tissues underneath my shirt to catch excess drainage. Inflating the cuff to proper levels daily also helps cut down on drainage. What took me by surprise after being tricked was I could breathe freely again. After my diaphragm strength decreased and my air intake was limited, I would feel sluggish, and every breath was a chore. With the insertion of the trach, my awareness and energy increased because of greater oxygen intake. The next question is, what do you know now that you wish you knew then? I would say initially, I didn't know what to expect or how I should be feeling after the procedure. I was released from the hospital, and my vent settings were incorrect. I wasn't getting enough volume. One day while preparing for work, and fainted. They took me to the emergency room, and eventually figured out my volume needed to be increased. I have been good ever since then. The next question is, what do you know now that you wish you knew then? I would say initially, I didn't know what to expect or how I should be feeling after the procedure. I was released from the hospital, and my vent settings were incorrect. I wasn't getting enough volume. And the final question is, what knowledge would have been helpful before you got the trach? I would say truly understanding the different stages of the healing process post-surgery. They shared with me the process, but experiential knowledge is much better in my opinion. While you are going through the process, there are low points, but you have to continue to believe you are making progress day by day. What up, please? What up?